It's League Lowdown time, and something a little different this episode as we peek behind the Iron Curtain and into delectable Bordarvia, one of Europe's youngest nations. For decades, Bordavia was a loyal member of the Soviet Union. But when the Union broke up, Bordarvia refused to let go of its communist ideals, and led by visionary leader General Ivan, Bordavia pulled its communist blanket up over its head and shut itself off from the rest of the world. Inside this totalitarian state, century-old traditions continued to thrive, such as the many mountain goat festivals, the production of family favourites such as cabbage, and the breeding of racing piglets. This is a nation where thousands of spectators would flock to see the country's leading female arm wrestlers compete. And here's 1995 All-Bordavia champion Tatiana Rushev, proving she's still got magic in those granite wrists of hers. Although arm wrestling was not the only sport to continue to flourish in Bordavia. On Sunday afternoons, the country would come to a virtual standstill as ferret tossing was televised on state TV. This is a country that continued to be proud of its plutonium enrichment, and where toxic lakes abound. Where men would gather in the town square on Christmas morning for the annual fighting festival, before returning home to their families for a traditional Bordavian feast. Until the late 90s, bears were trained as primary school teachers. And to this day, the country has an active space programme. For centuries, Bordavia has boasted some of Eastern Europe's finest distilleries. This is a nation where 38% of the population have spent time in prison, and where local communities have been founded on the mining of black gold, and where the legal age to drink alcohol is the lowest in Europe. And here are a group of friends out in downtown Oransk celebrating Igor's 9th birthday. But pressure has been mounting over recent years, and General Ivan has succumbed and loosened his planned economic principles. And now Bordavia has opened its borders and is adopting a more commercial outlook. Which brings us to modern day Bordavia and its cosmopolitan capital Oransk. But Bordavia is home to many vibrant cities, each with its own individual ambience and great architecture, such as Nakakova, unmistakable Gasker, luxurious Djiksin, affluent Nakatov, leafy Vybozniki, modern Zlanza down there in the south, and remote getaways such as Mizhovsky, or the unforgettable bandit territories of Oblast 10. But since allowing the West in, Bordavia is modernising at pace, and now embraces the latest agricultural techniques, plush hotels, state-of-the-art gyms, even teenage beauty pageants. General Ivan has even entered state-owned pop stars the Ivanov sisters into this year's Eurovision with their hit song, My Ox is Stronger Than Your Ox. But Bordavia has one tradition that will never die. Youngsters up and down the nation dream of one thing, and that is becoming a footballer. Tens of thousands of Bordavians head to the terraces every Saturday afternoon, whether it be the huge arena of Siska Oransk, or the more humble surroundings of a 5th Division club. And for the first time, this great nation is a playable league on Football Manager. So let's investigate the clubs you could take charge of in the League Lowdown Guide to Bordavia. Welcome along to a rather unusual episode of the League Lowdown. In this edition, we're going to be looking at the fictional nation of Bordavia, the brainchild of Swedish Football Manager creator MikaelinhoFM. But he has not done this project alone. What started off as quite a humble idea to create a new nation for Football Manager has snowballed into something that people across the Football Manager community have got involved in, creating their own cities, clubs, players and rivalries in this new league. We're going to put links in the description below to where you can get hold of a copy of the Bordavian database. But without further ado, let's have a look at the league structure. The top division in Bordavia is known as the Premier League, and it's a 16-team affair where the champions qualify for the Champions League. The team placed second qualify for the Europa League. 3 teams are relegated out of the top division at the end of the season. And Bordavia also has 2 cup competitions, the General Ivan Cup that has been running since the league was founded in 1992, and new for this season, the Kovda Cup as well, which is sponsored by Bordavia's leading carbonated beverage company. The teams that are relegated out of the Premier League drop into the second tier, which is a national division, with 3 teams being promoted from it and 4 teams getting relegated out of it down to the regional third tier, which is split across 2 divisions, one called the Vostok and one called the Zapad. But below this there is a 4th tier and a 5th tier in Bordavia. So if you're a fan of lower league Football Manager saves, well, Bordavia delivers on every account. So that's how the league structure works. But I think we need to start having a look at some of the clubs that you could take charge of in this database, starting with the club that have won the title every season since 1992. So where else would you start your tour of Bordavian football clubs than with the nation's top club, Siska Oransk, who amazingly have won the league and cup double every year since the formation of the league in 1992. They play in a cavernous 70,000 capacity arena known as the Prism, and they were only formed in 1991 when General Ivan's Communist Party seized control of Bordavia following the breakup of the former Soviet Union. This is the best resourced club in the country, helped out by the fact that this is the team of the army, so they can conscript young footballers from across the nation to go and play for them, often using this ploy to weaken their rivals when any of those clubs start to threaten Siska's position at the top of Bordavian football. Overthrowing them is going to be an almighty challenge for any player of Football Manager. There are some clubs that with a little bit of work might be able to topple this Bordavian superpower. Over the years, some of the main challenges to Siska's dominance has come from other clubs from the capital. Most notably last season, it was from Zaboda or Freedom Oransk, who only have a 20,000 capacity stadium. But over the last couple of seasons since their return to the Premier League, Freedom Oransk have started to emerge as one of the main challengers to Siska. 2 years ago, they finished 3rd in the league, and last season they managed to finish as runners-up. And so will have European football to contend with this season. They are, of course, led by Vladislav Mikhailov, one of the country's most exciting young coaches. But maybe if you replace him, you might be able to take Freedom to the top of Bordavian football, a place where their fans would love to sit and taunt their hated rivals from Siska. But another club from the capital that would love to topple Siska are Spartak Oransk, the club of the communist youth movement. This is a team that's been in the top division for much of the last 30 years, and they've also competed in a record 7 Bordavian Cup finals, losing each of them to Siska Oransk, 4 of them due to late penalty calls given against them, and 2 of them on a penalty shootout as well. This is a club that has not won a major honour, but back in the former Soviet Union, they regularly competed in the top league of the Soviet campaign, even reaching a Soviet Cup final and competing in Europe back in the 1960s. So if you like the idea of taking charge of one of the most heated and hated rivals of Siska, well, Spartak might definitely be a club that interests you. But if you like taking charge of capital clubs but you want a bit more of a challenge, and maybe you might consider Dynamo Oransk. This is the team of the secret police who down the years have been the closest challenger to Siska's dominance. You'll see that over the years they've regularly finished inside the top 4, often finishing as runners-up in the league. But every time they assemble a squad that looks like it's capable of competing with Siska, General Ivan conscripts their best players and they are left trying to rebuild. This again has created a very heated rivalry. It's also a very political rivalry where the secret police are not entirely happy that General Ivan comes from an army background and puts preferential treatment into the hands of Siska, often at the expense of Dynamo. They have had their squad ravaged by General Ivan again this season. So from finishing third last campaign, they're only expected to finish in the bottom half of the table this season, but maybe under your stewardship, they might even go better. But there are clubs from outside of Aransk that would like to consider themselves challengers, maybe for some of the cup competitions in Bordavia this season. One of those is Sportovoy Nakakova, who hail from the very north of the country, up there in Oblast 6. And this is a city where the people are as hard as its history. This is a military city with a massive fortress that dominates the old town. And this has been the backdrop to some of the wars that have ravaged Europe throughout the ages, including the Napoleonic Wars. If you're up for one more battle, then maybe Nakakova could be the city that you find your next home at. But if you fancy the idea of taking charge of a club that's a little bit more refined, maybe you should head out to Oblast 9 in the north of the country, where you will find the brewing capital of Bordavia in Myovsky. From there you will find the club of Red Star, who are promoted back to the Premier League for this season. They have very passionate fans, almost 20,000 turn up every week to see their Red Star heroes play. And this is a town that enjoys an annual ale bathing festival in the centre of the town, where people flock from all over Bordarvia to spectate. This could be a club newly promoted that you could take to the summit of the league in just your first season. But if you want to take charge of a club that is well supported, then maybe you want to head to Nakatov, where you will find 5 different clubs in the Bordavian leagues, amazingly all founded by 5 different brothers who started out trying to form one club together, but due to ideological differences, they all went their separate ways and formed 5 teams. One of the top of those is FK Nakatov, who have an insane support base playing in their 40,000 capacity stadium. Over recent years, they have been regularly in the top 3 or 4 in the Premier League. They've never been able to topple Siska Aransk, but they have appeared in 4 cup finals in the last 15 years. Maybe you could take charge of FK Nakatov and finally take them to the summit of Bordavian football. Or maybe you could head to the northeast of the country in Oblast 8, where you will find 2 teams from the city of Gasker that are competing in the top division. The smaller of the teams, in terms of attendances at least, are Championi Gasker, but they have been regularly finishing in the top half of the table, even securing a couple of second place finishes around the turn of the century. A few years ago they were still finishing 3rd in the league. They've dipped over the last couple of years, but considering they're only averaging about 11,000 fans at their home game, the fact that Championi Gasker are competing at this high level is absolutely admirable. But maybe you want to take charge of their better supported rivals, Gasker United. Both teams were founded in 1950, as all the teams in Gasker were. This has a bigger stadium with 35,000 fans, which is regularly filled by the passionate people down there in Gasker. This club have been away from the top division for quite a large part of their history, but they were promoted back 4 years ago and have been finishing around mid-table or just below. But with that support base, surely it's only a matter of time before Gasker United begin to challenge the top 4 again. But many players of Football Manager yearn for the opportunity of taking charge of the nation's oldest and most historic club, and to do that in Bordavia, well, you're going to have to head outside of the top division, and you're going to have to head outside of the capital of Aransk as well, because the oldest club actually comes from the far south of the country, down there in Oblast 7, and the city of Zlanza. The club in question is Dynamo, who were relegated out of the top flight a couple of seasons ago and are predicted to struggle in the second tier this season. They have a 36,000 capacity stadium that they regularly fill. And they were founded in 1907, making them the oldest club in Bordavia. They don't have much history since the formation of the Bordavian League, but back in Soviet times, this team were a mainstay in the top two divisions of Soviet football, even reaching a Soviet Cup final in the 50s, which they unfortunately lost. But maybe you could save them from relegation out of the top two divisions this season and steer Bordavia's oldest club back to the big time. Or maybe you'd like to take charge of their fiercest rivals from the same city. And that would of course be Automobilist Slanza, who don't have as much history as their rivals, but they have a bigger stadium, which they regularly pack with more than 40,000 automobile workers. This club has had a bit of an up and down existence over the last 20 years. Many times they've finished towards the top of the table, only to find many of their best players conscripted to the army and moving to Siska Oransk as soon as they seem to assemble a team capable of motoring their way to glory. Well, this team of car workers find their club ripped apart, even being relegated out of the top flight in the 2013-14 season. But they are back in the big time now. They are cheered on by 40,000 workers. The derby that they play against Dynamo is an experience that has to be done by any player of Football Manager. They are one of the clubs that might just be able to match Siska when it comes to support, but they don't have any trophies yet, and even during Soviet times, they never competed in the top two divisions. But maybe, under your management, they could finally topple Siska Oransk. But with 5 different tiers in the Bordavian League system, there is plenty of life outside of the Premier Liga, and there are lots of examples of clubs competing at a level that seems to be way beyond their means. One of the clubs in the second division that is doing just that is Pulia Sevedar, the Miracle of Bordavia. Their stadium only holds 2,500 fans. They regularly only attract crowds of about 700, but they've spent time in the Premier Liga in their history. They're currently in the second division, where they have finished 7th for the last 3 seasons, but this could be the year that they make a push, because despite their tiny means, they have attracted some good players through their academy, and one of them is as close as you will get to being a celebrity in Bordavia. This is Sergei Balshar, the captain of Sevedar, who may not be the best physically, and because of the workings of General Ivan, he seems to have been robbed of his opportunity to represent the Bordavian national team. But this guy was voted the most handsome footballer in Bordavia and took part in popular reality TV show Love Mountain, and is part of Bordavia's celebrity power couple, as he is currently courting female arm wrestler Tatiana Ivanshky. So if you like the idea of taking charge of a tiny club that has a superb player that they base their team around, well, Pulia Sevedar are just one of many interesting propositions in the Bordavian lower leagues. So there's the League Lowdown guide to Bordavia, a nation that has been created by the genius mind of MikaelinhoFM, but has been supported by dozens and dozens of other people in the Football Manager community. Don't forget to check the description below for links to where you can download this database, as well as links to all of MikaelinhoFM's other social media outlets, including his fabulous YouTube channel, where he will be running a save with his beloved Siska Oransk. We're going to see you very soon when we make another country the focus of our next League Lowdown.